Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out. And if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for your support.
Beneath the Gunmetal Sky. Chapter 1, The Devil Bleeds Too. The city never slept, not beneath its gunmetal sky. It brooded instead, thick with smog, secrets, and the low hum of danger that made every streetlight feel like a spotlight. In the heart of the city's most forgotten borough, the clinic stood like a stubborn flame in the dark. Free, underfunded, and often overwhelmed, it was the only refuge for people who had nowhere else to go. Justine Smith moved through its narrow halls like a ghost in scrubs. At 25, he was finishing his final year of med school, but he already had the kind of calm most doctors never learned. His hands were steady, his words sharper than they appeared. Kindness wasn't softness, it was choice. One he made every day, even when the world tried to harden him. He could have picked a cushy hospital uptown. He had the grades, the glowing recommendations, the charm. But instead, he chose this place. Because he believed people deserved help, even the broken ones, even the dangerous ones. Especially them. Frank Martin sat in the back seat of his blacked-out car, pressing a blood-soaked towel against his lower back. He hated bleeding. Not just the pain, he hated the vulnerability. It reminded him of being 15, curled in an alley, ribs broken, his first knife still slick in his palm. Back then, he bled alone. Now, he had men, money, fear. And yet, here he was. Bleeding again. Hospital's too risky, said Cole, his second in command, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. No shit, Frank growled. There's a clinic nearby. Run by med students. Off the books. Frank's glare could have cracked glass. I don't want some kid poking around in me. You want to walk again, boss? Frank didn't answer. He just nodded once, tight-jawed, as the car peeled off toward the slums. Justine was wrapping up for the night when the doors burst open. 3 men entered like a thunderstorm, sharp suits and sharper eyes. One of them held another man upright, Frank, though Justine didn't know it yet. Blood dripped from under the man's coat, pooling onto the floor. No hospitals, the tallest one barked. Justine didn't flinch. You think this is a hospital? They laid Frank on the table. The room smelled of metal and sweat and power. He's losing a lot of blood, Justine said calmly, snapping on gloves. Get out unless you want to be in the way. Cole hesitated. Out, Justine repeated, already cutting away fabric. Alone, he worked fast, silently, until the man groaned under his breath. Justine glanced up, ice-blue eyes glared at him from under blood-matted hair. Bullet missed your spine by half an inch, Justine muttered. Guess the devil's got good aim. Frank stared at him. You know who I am? Justine met his gaze evenly. I know what kind of man gets shot like this. You afraid? No, Justine said, stitching carefully. But you should be. For the first time in a long time, Frank felt something unexpected coil in his chest. Not fear. Not pain. Curiosity. Frank Martin didn't start with blood on his hands. He was born to it. Son of a butcher in a neighborhood ruled by corruption, he learned early that kindness was currency you couldn't afford. By 17, had gutted his first rival. By 20, had taken over 3 city blocks. Now, at 30, he owned more territory than the cops cared to admit and more enemies than he bothered to count. But he had rules. Loyalty. Discipline. No mistakes. Tonight had been a mistake. And now some mouthy med student had seen him broken. After the stitches were done, Justine peeled off his gloves. You'll need to change the dressings every day. Come back if the wound reopens. Frank slid off the table, slow and stiff, towering over him. You've got a death wish, talking to me like that. Justine didn't flinch. You've got a death wound. I think we're even. Their eyes locked, 2 storms circling, waiting for the lightning. Then Frank smirked. Just a flicker. Cold. Intrigued. Well, see about that, he said, and walked out. Justine stood in the empty clinic, heart pounding, jaw tight. He didn't know it yet, but something had shifted in that room. Something dangerous. Something alive. And beneath the gunmetal sky, fate had already begun its slow, merciless burn. Chapter 2, Ash and Ice. Frank Martin hadn't slept. Not really. Sleep came in fits, flashes of gunfire, of red seeping into his hands, of blue eyes staring back at him with a kind of defiance he didn't know how to kill. That kid. Justine. Had been in Frank's head for 2 straight nights, and Frank hated him for it. He hated the way the med student had looked at him, not with fear, not with awe, but with judgment. Like Frank was nothing more than a walking pathology. Something to be studied, dissected, fixed. Fixed. The very thought made Frank's teeth clench. He didn't need fixing. He didn't want softness. He didn't want those gentle hands to reach into the mess of his life and pull anything out. And still. His car turned toward the clinic. The clinic was quiet when Frank walked in. The few patients waiting looked up with wide eyes, shrinking under his presence like dogs sensing a storm. He moved through the space like a loaded gun. Justine was alone in one of the back rooms, scribbling notes on a chart. His white coat was wrinkled, his sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms flecked with dried ink and gauze tape. "You're not due for a dressing change until tomorrow," Justine said without looking up. Frank didn't speak. The silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Justine glanced up. "Or did you just miss me?" Frank stepped closer. "You've got a smart mouth. You've got a bullet hole. Want to compare scars next?" It wasn't flirting. It was a challenge. Always a challenge with this one. "You think you know me?" Frank's voice was a low growl. Justine set the chart down, calm. "I don't know you. I just see the damage." Frank's jaw tightened. "You think you're better than me? Because you wear that coat? Because you pretend to care?" "I don't pretend anything," Justine said. "But you do. Every second you walk around acting like you're untouchable, when really, you're just bleeding in different places." The words hit like a blade under the ribs. Frank lunged forward, slamming a hand against the wall beside Justine's head, pinning him with a gaze that could curdle blood. "Don't talk like you know me." Justine didn't flinch. His pulse was visible in his neck, but his eyes stayed on Frank's. "I don't know you," he said quietly. "But I see the hate. And it's not for me, it's for yourself." Something cracked. Just a fracture. Frank's other hand fisted in Justine's coat, dragging him close, but not kissing. Not hitting. Just tension. Their breath mixed, hot and harsh between them. "I should kill you," Frank hissed. "For talking to me like this. For looking at me like that." "Then do it," Justine said. "Or get out of my clinic." For a moment, they stood frozen in that space between fury and something darker. Then Frank shoved him back, not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to end it. "Or try to." "You don't know what I'm capable of," Frank said, voice shaking with something too complex to name. "I think that's what scares you most," Justine said. Frank left without another word. The door slammed behind him, echoing down the hallway like a gunshot. Justine exhaled slowly. His hands trembled a little, only now, after Frank was gone. He didn't know why he provoked him. Didn't know why he didn't back down. But something in him refused to. And maybe, just maybe, that same something in Frank didn't want him to. Chapter 3, A Weakness Worth Killing For. The warehouse stank of sweat and gunpowder. Chains rattled from rusted beams, and blood ran slow in the cracks of the concrete floor. Frank stood in the center of it all, sleeves rolled up, shirt splattered with red that wasn't his. His men watched from the shadows, silent, respectful. Afraid. The man tied to the chair was a small-time trader. skimmed cash. Ran his mouth to the wrong ears. But Frank wasn't here for him. He was here to forget. With each punch, he tried to kill the name rattling in his skull. Justine. With every crack of bone, he tried to silence the echo of that clinic, those hands, that stare. You're bleeding in different places. The words wouldn't die. And that made Frank hit harder. By the time he stepped back, his knuckles were raw and dripping. The traitor slumped unconscious. Frank wiped his hands with a cloth, slow and methodical. "Burn it," he said without looking back. "And find out who leaked the hit on me last week." Cole nodded. "Already working on it." Frank headed toward the car, but Cole followed. "There's talk," Cole said. "About the clinic." Frank's jaw tightened. "What kind of talk?" "One of Roman's guys saw you go there. Twice. Roman, the snake. One of Frank's oldest enemies. Always looking for cracks in the armor. They think the kid's important," Cole added carefully. "That he's a weakness." Frank stopped cold. A weakness. That word echoed in his head like a threat. "I want that clinic watched," he said. "But no one goes near him. No contact. No scare tactics." Cole raised a brow. "You protecting him now?" Frank turned, slow and dangerous. "No. I'm protecting me." Cole didn't argue. He knew better. Back at the clinic, Justine rinsed blood from his hands under flickering fluorescent lights. Another gunshot wound. A teenage boy this time, wrong place, wrong time. Again. This city was a disease. He glanced up, catching his reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, unshaven jaw, a bruise near his collarbone from where Frank had grabbed him days ago. He should have reported it. He should have been scared. But all he felt was confusion. Frank Martin wasn't supposed to feel. He wasn't supposed to look like a man on the verge of something fragile. And yet, Justine had seen it. For a second, it had been there. Buried in hate. In rage. But real. He dried his hands and walked out into the hallway, and stopped. A man stood at the end of it. Watching him. Not Frank. Someone else. Lean, well-dressed. Smiling too easily. "Hey there, Doc," the stranger said, voice silk-wrapped in razor wire. "You're hard to catch alone." Justine's gut went cold. "Can I help you?" he asked, tone neutral. "Oh, I think we both know who can help who," the man said, stepping closer. "See, you're in the business of saving lives. I'm more interested in what people would kill for." Justine backed toward the nearest supply room. "I'm calling security." The man chuckled. "Security won't help you, sweetheart. Not when your new friend paints a target on your back." He turned, slow and deliberate. "Tell Frank I said hi," he added. "And that we're watching." Then he was gone. Justine stood frozen, heart pounding, realization crashing down like thunder. He wasn't just treating patients anymore. He was standing in a war zone. And somewhere out there, the devil himself might be the only one trying to keep him alive. Chapter 4, Bloodlines and Blind Spots. The moment Cole told him, Frank didn't speak. He didn't yell. Didn't hit anyone. He just got into the car, calm as ice, and said, "Take me to Roman." Roman Petrov's private club pulsed with bass-heavy music and perfume laced with sweat and secrets. It was a kingdom of velvet shadows and narcotic smiles, and Roman sat at its throne like a vulture in silk. When Frank entered, the room stilled. People parted without being asked. Violence walked in with him. Roman grinned from behind his glass of vodka. "Frankie. You're early for once." Frank didn't sit. "You sent someone to the clinic." Roman's smile widened. "Just a hello. Thought your little med student could use a reminder. He's in our city now." Frank's hand twitched. "Not enough to draw a gun." "Not yet. I don't care what you think you know, Frank said. But if anyone so much as looks at him again, he'll paint your club red. Roman leaned forward, playful and lethal. You never used to make threats over pretty boys. Getting soft? And not getting anything, Frank snapped. But you are too close. Roman laughed. So it's real, huh? The devil has a heartbeat. Frank didn't flinch. Didn't blink. He simply leaned down, voice low enough to make the bartender stop polishing glasses. If you ever speak his name again, he'll put your tongue in a jar. Then he walked out, coat snapping behind him like a warning. Back at the clinic, Justine paced the break room, furious. Cole had just left after showing up unannounced with 2 bodyguards and a message. Frank says you're under watch now. Non-negotiable. Justine didn't do being protected like some civilian in a mob movie. He was a doctor. This clinic was his ground, and he wouldn't let Frank, or Roman, turn it into a battleground. He grabbed his phone and texted the devil himself. Justine, your guys were here. Call me. No answer. Justine, we need to talk. And no more guards. I don't need babysitting. Still nothing. Justine, Frank, if you keep trying to control me, it'll never help you again. That got him a reply. Frank, clinic. 1 hour. Frank showed up late. Of course he did. He walked in like a storm barely contained, jaw tight, eyes sharper than the blade he kept under his coat. Justine didn't wait for pleasantries. Tell your people to back off. Frank stepped closer. Someone from Roman's crew threatened you. I handled it. You shouldn't have to. Justine crossed his arms. You think control equals protection. It doesn't. And not a vase you can lock in a cabinet. You're a liability, Frank snapped. To me. To yourself. Justine's voice rose. Then stop coming back. Walk away. Silence. Thick, sharp, brutal. Frank looked at him, really looked, and something cracked. I can't, he said. Justine blinked. Why not? Because I haven't been scared in a decade, Frank muttered. And now I'm scared all the goddamn time. Justine's breath caught. Frank stepped in, not touching, but close, too close. I hate that you make me feel anything, he said. I hate that I remember your voice when I close my eyes. That when someone threatens you, I see red like I did when I was 17 and my brother got shot on my watch. Justine's voice softened. You had a brother? Frank nodded once. He died because I was too late. I won't be too late again. This time, when he grabbed Justine's wrist, it wasn't force. It was need. And Justine didn't pull away. I'm not asking you to be someone else, Justine whispered. But if you want me in your world, you can't lock me in a box. Frank's expression shifted. Torn between instinct and something dangerous. Trust. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Justine gave a faint smile. Good. Neither do I. Outside, in the shadows across the street, Roman's man watched them through a telephoto lens. He smiled. Because love made killers predictable. And predictable men were easy to destroy. Chapter 5, When the Smoke Clears. The night felt off. The air was too still, the streetlights flickering in a way Justine couldn't explain. He was locking up the clinic alone, late, like always, when he noticed it. A shadow that wasn't there before. He turned, but the alley was empty. Still, something itched at the back of his neck. He quickened his pace. His car was just across the street. 30 steps. 20. Then a voice behind him. Going somewhere, doctor? He spun just in time to see a fist come toward his face. Everything went black. When Frank got the call, he didn't ask questions. He just moved. Cole had found Justine slumped behind the clinic's dumpster, bruised and bleeding, half-conscious. No wallet. No phone. But Frank knew better. This wasn't a mugging. It was a message. Justine woke up to the scent of smoke and cologne and something darker. Not the clinic. Not a hospital. Silk sheets. Dim lighting. Leather furniture. Frank's penthouse. His head throbbed, and his lip was split, but he sat up fast when he realized where he was. And Frank was already there, leaning against the window, staring out at the city like he wanted to burn it to the ground. "Is this your idea of protection?" Justine croaked. "Because I've had more peaceful hostage situations." Frank turned slowly. His jaw was clenched. His hands were stained with blood that wasn't Justine's. "They touched you. You think I don't know that?" Frank crossed the room in 3 long strides. "You could have died." "But I didn't," Justine snapped. "Because your guy found me." "Because you found me." "So what? You want me to hide now? Let them win?" Frank's hand slammed the wall beside Justine's head, caging him in without touching. "This is what happens when I care about something," he said, voice shaking. "They come for it." Justine looked up at him, at the raw, unfiltered fear in those eyes. It wasn't anger anymore. It was terror. "Then stop pretending you don't care," Justine whispered. "Because this halfway thing? It's going to kill us both." The silence stretched between them like a live wire. And then Frank kissed him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate. Teeth. Heat. Hands fisting in fabric and breath caught between lips like a dam finally breaking. Justine clutched his shirt, pulled him closer, and for one brief second, there was nothing else, no bullets, no blood, no city. Just them. But then Frank pulled away. His chest heaved. His eyes were dark. Haunted. "This can't happen again." Justine's throat tightened. "Why not?" "Because I'll burn everything for you," Frank said. "And once I start, I won't stop." Justine stepped back, heart pounding. "Maybe it's not about stopping." Frank didn't answer. Because he knew the truth. The second he kissed Justine, it was already too late. Chapter 6: The Heat Between Sins. The city was still screaming outside, sirens, engines, life happening in chaos. But up in Frank Martin's penthouse, it was just silence. And him. And Justine. The air inside was thick, too hot, too quiet. Frank hadn't looked at him since that kiss. Since the moment he'd crossed the line, had sworn to never even toe. Justine stood by the glass wall, wearing nothing but one of Frank's black dress shirts, the sleeves rolled up, the hem brushing bare thighs. His hair was messy. His lips still healing. But there was defiance in his posture, a challenge written in the set of his shoulders. Frank finally stepped out of the shadows. Eyes like smoke and gunmetal. "You should be in bed," he said, voice rough from too many unsaid things. Justine turned, slow and deliberate. "And you should stop pretending that kiss didn't mean something." Frank didn't answer. Not with words. He closed the space between them in 3 quiet, measured steps. Then stopped, so close Justine could feel the heat coming off his skin. "I shouldn't want you like this," Frank murmured, eyes locked on his mouth. "I shouldn't need you." Justine's voice dropped, low and steady. "But you do." Frank reached out, fingers brushing the side of Justine's jaw, then ghosting down the curve of his neck. Justine leaned into the touch, soft breath escaping him. "This is dangerous," Frank whispered. "I'm not scared of you," Justine whispered back. That was all it took. Frank surged forward, and Justine met him in the middle. The kiss was nothing like the last. It was heat. It was hunger. It was weeks of tension snapping like a live wire, leaving sparks on their skin. Frank's hands roamed without hesitation, over Justine's chest, his hips, the small of his back. Possessive. Starved. Justine moaned into his mouth, fingers gripping Frank's shirt, pulling it over his head and tossing it to the floor. His palms slid over muscle and scars, every line of Frank's body hard and unrelenting. Frank lifted him, effortless, and pressed him against the wall. "I should stop," he growled, dragging his lips down Justine's neck, biting just hard enough to make him gasp. "But you want," Justine breathed, wrapping his legs around Frank's waist. "You don't want to." Frank's answer was a groan, deep and raw, as he carried him to the bed like he was something fragile, even though everything about this was violent and tender all at once. Clothes hit the floor. Then heat met skin. Fingers traced old wounds and new bruises, mouths memorized every inch like they were learning something sacred. Justine arched beneath Frank, nails digging into his shoulders as their bodies moved together, slow at first. Then faster, like they'd both been waiting for this too long. Every kiss was a promise. Every touch, a confession. And when Frank finally came undone, face buried against Justine's neck, it wasn't quiet. It was a sound no one had ever heard from him before. Need. And Justine didn't look away. He held him through it, through the trembling aftermath, through the way Frank's breath shook as he collapsed beside him, skin flushed, chest rising and falling. "I've never." Frank started. Then stopped. Justine turned to face him, still breathless. "What?" Frank looked at him like he was the first real thing he'd seen in years. "I've never let someone touch me like that," he whispered. "Like I'm human." Justine brushed a hand down his chest, over the scar just above his heart. "That's because no one else ever wanted the man behind the monster." Frank was silent for a long time. Then he kissed him again, slow this time. Like he didn't want it to end. And for once, neither of them pushed it away. Chapter 7, Where the Morning Bleeds. Justine woke first. The morning light spilled in like a secret, soft and golden against the high-rise glass. It painted across Frank's bare back, catching every scar, every shadow. He was still asleep, on his side, one hand loosely draped over Justine's waist, like his body hadn't yet accepted the calm as real. Justine studied his face. Relaxed, Frank looked younger. Softer. The permanent line between his brows was gone. His mouth, usually a hard, straight line, was parted in sleep, lips slightly swollen from hours of being kissed senseless. So this is what he looks like when he isn't carrying the world. Justine couldn't help it. He reached out and traced the edge of Frank's jaw with the backs of his fingers. Frank stirred, groaned low in his throat, and blinked open stone-colored eyes. "You're staring," he murmured, voice raspy with sleep. "Get used to it," Justine said, lips twitching into a smirk. "I'm stubborn like that." Frank gave a soft, breathy chuckle, surprising even himself. Then he leaned forward and pressed a kiss to Justine's bare shoulder. A beat of peace. Of warmth. Then Frank's phone buzzed on the nightstand. The moment shattered. Frank sat up, already back in boss mode, shoulders stiff, jaw tight. He read the message on the screen. Justine watched as something in his expression shifted. Gone was the lover. In his place, the king of shadows. "What is it?" Justine asked. Frank didn't answer right away. He stood, naked, grabbed the phone, and pulled on a pair of slacks with practiced efficiency. His silence said everything. "Frank." They hit the clinic. Justine's stomach dropped. "What?" "Roman. Or someone working under him. They torched the front door and left a message." Justine sat up fast. "Is anyone hurt?" "No," Frank said. "Not this time." But the way he said it, it wasn't a promise. It was a warning. By the time they arrived at the clinic, the smoke had cleared but the damage was obvious. Charred front windows. Burned out entryway. Police tape fluttered like a wound trying to scab over. The message was spray-painted across the sidewall in bright red. "He bleeds like the rest." Frank's fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. His men kept their distance. Everyone knew that look. Frank Martin was quiet when he was about to get violent. Justine stared at the message, heart pounding. "They know I matter to you." Frank didn't deny it. "Then don't lie to me," Justine said, stepping in front of him. Who was it? You'll find out, Frank replied darkly. Don't find out, Justine snapped. Tell me. Frank's eyes flicked to him, hard and unreadable. But beneath it, there was something else, fear. There's a leak, he said quietly. Inside my circle. Justine froze. Someone close to you? Frank nodded once. Someone who knows where you sleep. Later, back at the penthouse, Frank stood at the bar, pouring a double shot of whiskey with steady hands. Justine watched him from across the room, the distance between them suddenly feeling too wide. You think I can't handle this, Justine said quietly. That am a liability. Frank turned to him slowly. No. I think you're the only real thing I've touched in years. And I don't know how to protect something like that. Justine crossed the space between them and took the glass from Frank's hand. Set it down. You don't have to protect me from feeling something, Frank, he said. That's the one thing you're allowed to give me. Frank looked down at him, something tortured and fragile in his gaze. And Justine, bruised, furious, defiant, reached up and pulled him into a kiss that wasn't soft this time. It was a vow. One that said, I'm not going anywhere. No matter who comes for me. No matter who betrays you. Chapter 8, Blood in the Water. The first body hit the floor just after midnight. A trusted man. Someone had served Frank Martin for nearly a decade. Found with a knife in his throat and a burner phone still buzzing in his pocket. Roman had been calling. Frank stood over the corpse, the warehouse cold and echoing around him. Justine was behind him, silent but present, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Second one this week, Luca muttered. They're thinning us out from the inside. Frank didn't say anything. Just knelt and yanked the phone from the dead man's hand. One message. You bleed for him now? How soft you've become. R. Frank's jaw clenched. The phone cracked in his hand. It was after they returned to the penthouse, doors locked, guns checked twice, that Justine finally spoke. Why didn't you kill him first? Frank turned, slow. Who? Whoever you suspected. Whoever gave up my name. Frank studied him for a long moment. Because I was hoping I was wrong. Justine shook his head. You don't strike me as the hopeful type. I'm not, Frank said. But ever since you came into my life, things don't make sense anymore. Justine stepped closer. You mean you're starting to feel? Frank's hands gripped the edge of the bar. It's not just feeling, Justine. It's distraction. Weakness. It's... He exhaled. It's you. And not your weakness, Justine said, stepping into his space. I'm the only person in this whole fucked up world who's still standing by you. Frank grabbed him, fingers tight around his wrist. But for how long? He asked, voice low and torn. How long before this ruins you too? Justine leaned in, defiant. You don't get to push me away because you're scared. Their lips met again, not desperate this time, but raw. Grounded. Like two men who knew the end was coming, and kissed anyway. Later that night, the traitor made his move. Frank's second in command, Elias. Loyal since the early days. Had been feeding intel to Roman, convinced Frank was growing soft, letting love rot the empire from within. You let a med student crawl into your bed, Elias snarled, gun raised, blood on his sleeve. That's not the man I followed into hell. Frank didn't blink. No, I'm the man walking out of it. The gun went off. But not Elias. Justine stood behind him, hands shaking, the smoking pistol slipping from his grip. Frank caught it before it hit the floor. You killed him, he said, voice soft. Justine's breath hitched. I saved you. And that was when Frank knew, truly knew, that this man wasn't his weakness. He was his salvation. They left the body where it lay. And Frank did what had never done before. He walked away from the empire. Burned accounts. Torched safe houses. Let Roman rise with the ashes, because Frank didn't want the crown anymore. He wanted freedom. And he wanted Justine. 6 months later. A little town by the sea. Quiet. Sunny. No guards. No shadows. No blood. Just a man in linen shirts who kissed Frank Martin on the mouth every morning before coffee. Justine worked part-time at a clinic now. Frank spent most of his time fixing up the old house they'd bought, learning how to live without orders and secrets. He still had nightmares. Still flinched at certain sounds. But every time he opened his eyes, Justine was there. Warm. Real. And when Frank kissed him in the kitchen, lazy and lingering, he finally understood. Some wars weren't meant to be won. Some were meant to be left behind. Because beneath the gunmetal sky, love didn't make him weak. It made him human.
And that wraps up our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated.